All right, all right. Welcome into the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you very much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, you got to subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, we are back on Monday this week, and it is 5:17 Eastern time. We got here, and that means we're live on YouTube. Go over to the A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers YouTube channel and subscribe there. But you got to hit that notification bell. If you hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button, then you will be notified when we go live, and then it won't matter when we go live. You'll be here with us. You'll be able to hang out, have a good time, weigh in on the show. It's always great. At Charlie_Burris, that's TNT at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. Zach, how are we doing on this, at least to this point, what has virtually been a sportsless week? I guess the Lady Vols played Winthrop on Sunday, but it's been about a nothing Tennessee-wise. What's up, man?
Yeah, how quickly can we get some playoff football games in this past weekend? I mean, that feels like the perfect setup moving forward. Why do we have to wait 3 weeks for the playoffs to start? No other sport does that. So maybe that's something that as this continues to expand and the playoff kind of evolves, maybe we'll get that here coming up soon.
I really hope so. But until then, it's Washington and Boise State, and it was a bloodletting. Just watching.
Yeah, Army Navy was fun. It was a fun game.
That is true. Hey, we got to give them credence. Shout out to the folks that serve over there and that great football game. That was a good game. Fine. All right. I overlooked that one. But what we didn't overlook here on the Big Orange Podcast, of course, is the news that developed over the last week. We're going to talk about Jim Knowles getting hired as the defensive coordinator after the kind of fake out that happened with the guy at Washington. And then go through, obviously, some players opting out of this bowl game. You already got a couple, Arian Carter, Jamad McCoy. Not surprising there. Maybe surprising on Arian Carter a little bit. And then a little bit of basketball before we go. The Louisville game tomorrow where Tennessee is an underdog at home against the Louisville Cardinals. A bit of an ugly scene there for basketball, but maybe they can get it back on track by winning tomorrow against a very good Louisville team. We'll see what happens. We're going to talk about all of that, but let's start out with this Jim Knowles stuff. Tennessee hires Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator from Penn State, who has illustrious things on his resume, such as losing to UCLA and Nico Iamaleava earlier this season. But also...
That's what you led with?
That was an ugly one. But also smacking Nico Iamaleava and Tennessee in the college football playoff last year en route to a national championship with Ryan Day's Ohio State Buckeyes. An interesting hire in that everybody in the first couple of days of last week thought that it was going to be Ryan Walters from Washington, and then the news comes out about Knowles, and then it basically, what gets said about it is basically it was Knowles all along, kind of. An interesting move. What were your thoughts on this with that?
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I know we talked about Jim Knowles a little bit on here last week, and my feeling last week when we were talking about it was that it probably wouldn't be Jim Knowles because I wasn't sure how the personalities would align, and that's purely speculation. I have no idea how Knowles and Heupel and all those guys will work together. I guess Heupel feels good about it, and that's really all that matters. But just from an outside perspective, you kind of think about the way Heupel has done things, hiring people he knows. Ryan Walters made perfect sense there. I think that's where most of that conversation came from. Walters said that he hadn't spoke to anybody at Tennessee, and he may have been telling the truth, as it turns out, even though we didn't believe him at the time. But it just felt like that was the direction Heupel would go. But I think this is a reminder, just from the top here. I think it's a reminder that Heupel's still, I would say he's young as a coach, but as a head coach, this is the first time he's ever been in this position that he's currently in. I mean, going into year 6, we talked about it before. That's kind of where you got to take a big step forward at some point here, or you don't get, to year 10 eventually if you don't get over this kind of hump here, where it seems like every coach at some point, you're at a school long enough, you have to replace some key coordinators. Philip Fulmer had to do it. David Cutcliffe a couple times. One time it cost him his job, and that's what can happen at any school. But we've never seen Heupel operate in this situation before, right? He was only at UCF for 3 years. You don't make these calls as an offensive coordinator like he was at Oklahoma for so long. So first time he's been in this spot, and he goes and swings for the fences and makes a big hire. A guy that's, like you said, won a national championship at Ohio State in 2024. There's concerns with every hire, and I'm sure we'll dive into some of that. But on the surface, I think this is Heupel saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to do what it takes to take this thing to the next level." And ultimately, we'll find out if this is the right move or not over the next year, a couple of years. But it's a big swing from Heupel, and I think you have to appreciate that after what we saw last season. And everybody was ready for some change, and you can't get much more change at the defensive coordinator position than this.
It's a really interesting move. I definitely agree with you. I think it's Heupel kind of saying, hey, we're going to take this thing seriously. We're not screwing around here. And then beyond that, I think I said this on Twitter about it. I think it's a little bit of an odd fit. When you dive into Knowles, everybody talks about how he's an Ivy League guy, went to Cornell, like Andy Bernard on The Office.
Worked on Wall Street for his first year out of college before he got back into coaching.
He went where?
He worked on Wall Street his first year out of college. There's that gap year there. He worked on Wall Street and then got into coaching.
Interesting. I had not heard that little tidbit, but it makes sense. But Ivy League guy, a thinking man's defensive coordinator, I guess, so to speak. And supposedly his system is very complicated and takes a long time to get settled in and truly make the best of it wherever he goes. I think you saw that at Ohio State, kind of weak in his first year, and then it was the best in America for a couple of years. And it's interesting in that way because the guy has improved defenses drastically, basically everywhere he's gone. It does seem like it works just fine, specifically Illinois, more than almost anywhere. Not Illinois. Where was he? Oh, where?
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State. Yes, that was Illinois.
Illinois was Ryan Walters.
Yeah. Oklahoma State. That's almost more interesting than anything because you associate the Big 12 with zero defense, and he did a good job there, and a really good job. And then was kind of a failed head coach at Cornell or whatever, and that's sort of his history. But he's made defenses a lot better. But it's kind of fascinating to me because Heupel's in this we gotta win right now, right this second, or else sort of. And then the schedule, we're not even really going to dive into this, but the schedule got announced for next year in the last week. And what's the best way to say it? 5 and 7's on that schedule, and 10 and 2's probably on that schedule, depending on how you play. But they're both realistic opportunities, and if you don't get this defense figured out, things could go downhill real quick, just like they did this season. You end up losing to Vandy at home by 21 points all of a sudden. Now, with all that said, I will say if Knowles could take you to 40th in America in total defense, scoring defense, it would be a vast improvement. You were 90 something at the end of this season. Horrific from Tim Banks and why he got fired. But if he could take you there, just right at serviceable this upcoming season, and then you could pair that with big quarterback out of the portal, something like that, you could maybe do something. There's an opportunity here, but in terms of Heupel being in this situation of you got to get this thing figured out ASAP, hiring a guy that is notoriously known for how long it takes his defenses to get incorporated it's a fascinating move, frankly. I'm very interested to see how it goes.
I am too, and Jim Knowles is he's an interesting guy. I mean, obviously we've probably all tried to read about him and find out as much information as we can about him beyond what we knew from when Tennessee played Ohio State last season in the playoff. He's like you said, he's a thinking man's man. He's intense. I mean, he demands a lot, but he's quirky, right? I mean, he's a David Cutcliffe guy, which I think is a unique connection to Tennessee, and the fact that he worked with Cutcliffe at Duke. He also worked with him at Ole Miss in 2003, which is I believe Eli Manning's maybe last year there. So he's got some history with Cutcliffe. I'm sure I mean, I've heard Cutcliffe talk about him a little bit in the past, and he's high on Knowles. He calls him kind of a lovable bizarre. Like you get to know him and you appreciate who he is because he's different. And he's aware that his defense can be complicated at times. He's talked about that. He talked about it last season at Penn State, and that's something that he's working to figure out ways to help players play faster, play free, play without thinking out there. We got to assume that he's going to figure out how to get that defense installed in a quicker way. Because look, before these last few years, you could kind of have those defenses and it was okay if you were an established program because guys are going to be in your program for a while. And once you get it going, it kind of works, right? The young guys learn from the upperclassmen, and it's just harder to do that now because of the portal era. There's so much roster turnover from year to year that you kind of have to change your approach. So I don't know how big of a deal that's going to be. It's just we're just gonna have to wait and see what his approach is at Tennessee. I'm sure it won't be the exact same as it was at Penn State. And that's the other thing too with this hire is people will kind of point to some of the stuff that happened at Penn State last season. It's like, oh well, Jim Knowles wasn't the home run hire that they thought he was going to be, and sure, there's some truth to that because the season didn't go well for Penn State, but clearly there was a lot of other things going on at Penn State. I mean, they fired James Franklin before Halloween, and he was, a game away from the national championship a year ago. So there were a lot of things going on at Penn State, and then they went through this crazy coaching search that went for 2 months, and they hired the guy that they forgot to even text to begin with or something. It was a weird situation, so I don't think you can put a ton of stock into what he did at Penn State last season. Now, I will point out that Penn State team wasn't that great, obviously, and they almost beat Indiana. And Jim Knowles' defense held them in check pretty well. Had a productive day, like 4 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. I mean, they performed well against that Indiana offense. And that next to last play of Indiana's game-winning drive, that crazy pass that we all saw from Mendoza to Omar Cooper, where he kind of levitated in the end zone or something. I don't know how he got his foot down somehow. Is essentially what won them the game. I mean, if that pass is 6 inches higher, Penn State gets another chance there on 4th down to basically win the game and really make an impact on the way the seeding played out in the playoff. And that was because of in large part because of Knowles' defense. And even that last play, Mendoza talked about it a little bit this weekend at the Heisman ceremony, specifically mentioning Knowles by name that he blitzed, went cover 0 3 plays in a row. And it was still it was a good call. I mean, it took a miracle play from Indiana to score. Sometimes you just got to tip your hat, and that was one of those situations. As frustrating as it can be, like that's just going to happen from time to time. But you look at what he did at Ohio State, and I mean, he was dominant. They were dominant through the playoff. They had the number 1 scoring defense in the nation. They had good players too, but that's what he can do on the upper end. If you get the players with elite talent, he can put the best defense in the country out there, and because he's already done it.
I'm excited. I think ultimately, as I said, does it seem like a little bit of an odd fit for this exact moment for Josh Heupel? Maybe, but I'm excited to see how it goes because I don't want to say I'm scarred a little bit, but maybe I am. I was full-time media when Butch Jones brought in old Bob Shoop, and everybody thought it was a huge hire
from Penn State.
Yeah, from Penn State. Everybody thought it was a big hire, and that was a disaster. Absolute disaster. And then you brought in Tim Banks from Penn State, and it wasn't a complete disaster, but, he had a couple of fun seasons in there. But ultimately, it was a complete disaster. At the very end of it, it was a complete disaster. So I don't know what it is about Tennessee getting Penn State defensive coordinators, but we've done it. but I'm gonna be kind of on pins and needles to see exactly how this goes. Now, I think a huge piece of it is who you get in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
That is just A1A. That's goal number one right now. When I look at what Tennessee truly needs, yeah, you need a defensive coordinator. Jim Knowles needs to make his staff. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But you got to just get dudes in here, especially if Colton Hood's going to jump. He hasn't announced it yet. I got to think that he
probably.
is.
He might be a first, second round pick.
Yeah, he's getting second round evaluations, and you just got to jump on that. NIL's not going to be able to touch that. And so Ricky Gibson will be back, but that's not going to cut it. It's just not. And Arian Carter's gone, and some fun young talent there, but you got to get some men in here to play on your defense. Period.
Yeah, I think specifically you need safeties. What I've seen is that safeties are pretty important in Jim Knowles' defense. I think one thing too with him at Penn State that people don't really think about is that he was hired pretty late at Penn State. I mean, it was after Ohio State won the national championship, was like January 19th, 20th, somewhere in there, like the latter half of January. And by then, it's challenging to get kids in the portal because the top targets are pretty much gone by that point. So for Knowles to have, kind of attacked the portal and brought in some talent that he would have liked to have at Penn State, it just didn't work out that way. He's in a much better spot at Tennessee because, look, the portal doesn't open until January 2nd. He's supposed to be in Knoxville, I think, this week, working on all that stuff. You've got a couple of weeks there to really attack that and make some headway in the portal. So I think that'll be huge as long as they utilize the portal in the right way and attack it the right way. Because you are losing, like you said, you're losing Arian Carter. You're losing Josh Josephs, to the NFL. We'll see if anybody else goes. Colton Hood, as you mentioned, probably on his way out. That leaves you with Gibson and Redmond. So, we'll see what they can do, but they're going to definitely have to be aggressive in the portal there and upgrade some of the spots, especially at linebacker. I mean, I know you've got some nice young talent at linebacker with like Perlett and Spillman and some of those guys, but I think you need some guys that have some real experience to trot out there at the beginning of the season next year, because that 9-game SEC schedule, it's tough to have young guys are going to make mistakes. I mean, that's just part of it. It was part of the deal this past season. If you play young guys, you've got to be okay with the fact that they're going to make mistakes. They're going to be out of position at times. They're not going to be, NFL tacklers right off the bat for the most part. You're going to have to live with that if you play those guys. And I don't think you can afford that going into next season. I think you've got to go get some experience out of the portal.
Yeah, just like a quarterback with Faison Brandon. I mean, would it be fun if your 5-star guy comes in and plays? Maybe. But ultimately, you need somebody there that's not a freshman. And if Knowles' defense can be complicated and you need some guys who have maybe been there and done that in those spots, I mean, the transfer portal is your friend right now. And I said it the last couple of weeks. Vanderbilt came into your building and embarrassed you, pulled your pants down and embarrassed you in your home stadium with a bunch of transfers. So maybe just take a note out of Clark Lee's book. Didn't think I'd ever be saying that, sadly. But here we are. Take a page out of Clark Lee's book and hit the portal really, really hard. We'll see what Heupel does. But to that point of what's coming down the pipe for next season, Arian Carter gone, Josh Joseph's aging out. Chris Brazzell announces he's NFL bound. Good move on his part, I think. The one so far out of everybody that we've seen, and the big one that everybody's waiting on is Colton Hood. We'll see what happens.
Well,
there.
And another one is Lance Hurd. That's another pretty big one.
That's true.
You really want both your offensive tackles back. It's hard, man. It's hard
Yes.
to win when you're constantly replacing offensive linemen. And that was another reason that I wasn't down on the offense going into this season, was because you'd replaced so many pieces on that offense. It'd be really nice to have the bulk of that offensive line come back. I mean, I think
Yes.
I'm not sure what Moe's situation is, but I think you'd have pretty much your whole offensive line back if Lance Hurd were to return. I don't know who played left tackle and right tackle between him and Sanders. That might, who knows? That'll be a conversation that has to be had, but that's a pretty big one there. If you can get Lance Hurd to come back for one more season, and really, I think he should. Like I get Brazzell leaving, Arian Carter, yeah, maybe. I think he's got some development left in him, but he's athletic enough and instinctual enough that I think he'll be okay at the next level. But Hurd, that offensive line position, the development is so bad at the next level. These guys just are going too early. They're not getting the development they need. There should be no rush. Like just wait till you're fully ready to go to the NFL. But it's hard to pass up even second round, third round money because NIL is not gonna you're not gonna pay multiple millions of dollars for non quarterbacks for the most part.
I think it would be perfect if Hurd would come back. You have your left and right tackles with Sanders with the time to develop more at right tackle, but where he moves to left. I mean,
That would be ideal.
It would be massive. So maybe they pay up there. I'm sure Hurd knows kind of the position he's in. I'm sure he knows his draft grades too, which have been unimpressive. So I think kind of surprisingly, actually, because I thought he had a pretty decent year. But I do agree with you. Guys are hopping in there too soon. You have to look no further than the Tennessee Titans to just see some horrific draft picks for,
across them. I mean, not to go off on offensive lineman here. I know we're talking about the defense and Jim Knowles and what that's going to look like his coaching staff, but it really is like at the NFL. You're seeing it's a problem. I mean, that's the big reason why the Chiefs are going to miss the playoffs is their offensive line was just disastrous, and you get some injuries and nobody has any depth. It's just really difficult. If you can win up front, it makes winning a whole lot easier.
I see Big Ten Jeff in the comments here. He says, just a heads up, Knowles doesn't recruit. We should preface Big Ten Jeff, a big Ohio State guy. Who
Tim Bates didn't recruit either. It might just be a defensive coordinator thing these days. I don't know.
That's what I was about to say. I mean, you're just moving from one guy that didn't recruit to another guy that doesn't recruit. So nothing new there. Maybe you can actually have a coordinator that coaches better than Tim Banks did.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's the portal is the Wild West. We'll cover everything that happens there as far as that goes. I don't know exactly what Hype will be able to do, but it's got to be like 15 guys during this portal session. You gotta load up. You have to.
They were too young last season. That was one of their big problems last season, among other things. They were too young to really get past some of those, to win some of those games. Those mistakes that we saw were youthful mistakes, like the David Sanders deal against Oklahoma. It's just stuff like that. It's going to happen when you have a roster that young.
Yep. We'll see exactly what happens there for Tennessee. But as of right now, something interesting. Well, we need to cover this before we move on from the Knowles stuff. Finally, you wrote an article that was about a potential hire that he might make. There's obviously been these rumblings that he's going to kind of install his own guys, that he might bring some guys with him. And what are you seeing there, Zach, that you wrote about?
Yeah, so he's an interesting guy. Like nobody followed him really from Ohio State to Penn State, but he's worked at so many places over the years, and he has had guys follow him. I don't know if this is like a Bo Callahan situation, like in the movie Draft Day, where he doesn't have any friends and nobody, shows up for him. But I think the co-defensive coordinator there at Penn State, who's a safeties coach, Anthony Poindexter, Chris Lowe mentioned that's a possibility to follow Knowles to Tennessee, which would make sense because we've already talked about how important the safeties are in Jim Knowles' defense. Having a guy coach safeties that's already been with him for a season at Penn State feels like that would provide some important continuity there as far as coaching that position, somebody that he can trust a little bit to help install everything. Because I imagine that's part of the deal too, is when you're leaving and you're not bringing a bunch of staff members with you, not only are you trying to install it for the players, you're also installing it for the rest of the coaching staff, which makes it even more problematic to get results quicker. So that's a name that we'll see. I don't think he's not being retained by Matt Campbell at Penn State, so he could be a possibility to maybe go to Virginia Tech with James Franklin. We'll see what happens there. Matt Gary from Ohio State is a safeties coach. I think co-defensive coordinator maybe. That might be one to watch. Tennessee would probably have to pay him quite a bit to get him to leave Ohio State for Tennessee, but he's more of a Knowles guy than he is a Ryan Day guy, because he was with Knowles at I think he's with him at Duke, Oklahoma State, some previous stops. So he'd been with Knowles for a long time and spoke glowingly about Knowles, calls him the best defensive coordinator in the nation, all that kind of stuff. So that might be another option to join him as well. And then I think the defensive line coach is interesting to watch. Rodney Gardner's contract is up next month. It's obviously a guy that you want to keep. He's one of the best in the nation. Does he stay at Tennessee? I don't know. Until he signs a new contract, it's hard to say. There's been speculation that he might want to, get closer to home or some other things that he's had going on. I have no idea. But if he leaves or if he doesn't come back to Tennessee, but you've kind of got a built-in option already on the staff at Tennessee that has a connection to Jim Knowles and Marion Hobby, a former Vol defensive lineman that was with Knowles previously at Ole Miss, maybe, or Duke, or somewhere along the line. Maybe it was Duke with Cutcliffe. So he's been with Knowles before in the past. He was at Clemson, with Brent Venables for a time, and he was an analyst this past season on Tennessee's staff. So, Big Ten Jeff mentions that Matt Gary is not the co-defensive coordinator. My apologies. That's just what Ohio State's official website says. So you'll have to take that up with them there. But that defensive line position is another one to watch. I think that'll be interesting. And Corey mentioned that Arkansas is targeting Hobby. I do wonder if Hobby's going to wait and see how this plays out before he makes a decision, or if he has some conversations. Because I would assume he would stick at Tennessee if that position became available. I mean, he's a former Vol. It would just make sense.
It would. See what happens. I've already said it. I'm not going to be particularly bothered if any of the defensive staff outside of Rodney Garner gets replaced. They could all go. And that's just, I don't know. I don't think that I've seen anything particularly impressive from almost any of them. So I'll just kind of leave that there. And I think we will see just probably right after the bowl game. They said they're not going to introduce or have Knowles in front of media till after the bowl game, I would assume, right?
Yeah, and that's weird how that'll work out, too, because you got William Inge, who is the interim defensive coordinator for Tennessee. He's going to coach in the bowl game. Is he retained? I have no idea. He has no connection to Knowles. I'm sure they're aware of each other, know each other, and probably already talked. But does he keep him on? Does he look somewhere else? That's kind of awkward if you hire a linebackers coach and then he's still got to, be the intern for the bowl game while also looking for his next opportunity. The timing of it's all weird, which we all know the calendar's really messed up in December right now. But balancing all that with the portal, I imagine that it would probably be after the portal closes and all, probably into January before you have these big intro pressers.
Whenever that news does come out, obviously we'll talk about it here. But until then, that's kind of what we know about Knowles. And then as for the bowl game, it's shaping up to actually be like a pretty decent game, it seems like, where you're going to have, I think, the two quarterbacks playing, and they're two long-tenured guys and guys that made their teams a lot better, and that's fun. And Tennessee's top receiver will be out, I think. Illinois' top defensive player is out. What's the guy's name? Jacques. I think he's opting out. But on the whole, kind of shaping up to be a little bit of a classic bowl game where the players actually play in the game. I don't want to speak too soon.
Yeah, we still got 15 days to get there, so.
Yeah, I think you'll see Colton Hood. If I had to guess, I think ultimately he ends up not playing and moves on to the NFL. I really, really hope Hurd stays and he plays, and we'll see. But otherwise, that's kind of what we know so far. I don't know if you had any other tidbits around football to this point, but that's kind of it at the moment.
I'm interested to see what Josh Heupel does with the quarterback position, because that's got to happen. I mean, that pretty much has to start happening like today, or really yesterday, or 3 days ago, whatever. Because we saw today several quarterbacks hitting the portal officially announcing their intentions to enter the portal. Sorsby from Cincinnati, DJ Ladway at Florida, Raiola at Nebraska, who's maybe might be Oregon bound on who knows where half of these guys are going to end up, wherever the money goes. But quite a few quarterbacks are going to be available now. So if you're going to go get one, and you can't wait at this point, like you can't wait to find out about Joey Aguilar. You can't wait, until after Christmas and be like, yeah, okay, here's who's coming back, here's who's not. If you want to go get the top option from the portal, you got to go now. And I don't know if that's what Heupel wants to do. I have no idea how he views his quarterback room. I don't think anybody does at this point. We know he likes George McIntyre a lot. Does he think George McIntyre's ready? I don't know. Based on the physicality that we saw from George McIntyre towards the end of the season, I don't know if he's ready to hold up against an SEC defense. Is he going to be able to put on enough weight before next, August or September? I don't know. I mean, that's something Josh Heupel has to decide, and I don't think you're going to go in there with a true freshman and Faison Brandon, as talented as you think he is, against a 9-game SEC schedule. That doesn't seem like a good idea. It's rare that a true freshman comes out and leads you to a deep postseason run or anything like that, or even can hold up, through 15, 16 games physically coming out of high school to play at that level. That doesn't seem like a realistic option either. I mean, I think you have to go find a quarterback. I don't really see any other option. I mean, that's not saying Heupel will. I mean, again, we'll just have to see what he does, but I just don't see any way that you can go into next season with those as your two starting options, assuming Jake Merklinger leaves, and even Merklinger has very little experience, so I don't think he's a viable option to start either if he were to stay. So that's going to be interesting to see. I think that's a big part of how successful they are next season.
Some of the big names on the board at the moment, the one you've heard the most is Sorsby from Cincinnati. Apparently his parents live here, something along those lines, and as a relative that coaches high school football locally. And
he could still go to the NFL too. He hasn't fully decided if he's going to transfer or go to the NFL.
And as far as that one goes, I saw that Texas Tech is in on him. I don't know how real that is. That's just from perusing Twitter. But if Texas Tech is in on him, he's already gone. Because the guy, they're going to give him $8 million or whatever ridiculous number. And so good luck there. But DJ Lagway into the portal today? DJ Lagway, Tennessee quarterback? It'd be... If he can improve the deep ball, I feel like it could work. I still have few too many turnovers for Heupel, but we said that about Joey. Look how that turned out. I don't know.
I don't either. I keep asking myself, did Lagway get Napier fired, or did Napier screw up Lagway last season?
Yeah.
I mean, we may not know the answer to that until we see them away from each other.
Yeah, we'll find out soon enough. But I couldn't agree more. It's absolutely required. You have to get a quarterback. It's just not even negotiable, frankly, in the state that you're in. And how tough the schedule looks. I mean, your first SEC home game's Texas. I think you got to go to Texas A&M, South Carolina back on the schedule, even though they stink,
at South Carolina too, though. We know how that goes. Hopefully, that's a noon game.
No. Yeah, hopefully. So it's. I don't want to say it's a dire situation for Josh Heupel. It's maybe a little dramatic, but it's a situation where, as we've been saying in recent weeks, he has to be desperate. We got to see urgency out of this guy right now, immediately. This Knowles hire seems that way, even if the implementation of Knowles' defense takes a while, and you could say that shows it's not as urgent, maybe. But yeah, in the portal, they better be working these back channels right now. If you got to pay this Sorsby guy $4 million or whatever it is, you're not in a position to say no to that right now. You're not. I hate that. But you for right now, you kind of got to be Texas Tech at the moment and just absolutely raid the portal and see where you land. Because that's, again, you got your butt kicked by Vandy on your home field. We're not joking anymore about this. So
what do you think? What do you think of I think this is an interesting conversation, or just discussion point. I think there's a couple different philosophies that schools are trying to figure out how they even feel about it. Do you eschew high school recruiting at quarterback, like totally, and just not even really worry about it unless some guy just happens to make sense, is a local guy or something, or is okay sitting and exclusively look at the portal, because it feels like some programs are pretty much taking that approach where you get, a guy that's got 3 years of experience, that's played a lot of games, and you can kind of plug and play, and he can take off. Because we're seeing, Mendoza at Indiana. I mean, it's happened all across college football constantly, and you're even seeing, Georgia lost Jared Curtis to Vanderbilt, and I'm not trying to discount what Vanderbilt did in landing him. But if Georgia puts the full court press on that kid and does everything they can to keep him from going to Vandy, do you think they keep him away from Vandy? I mean, I think probably, right? Like I think that's fair to at least suggest. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what's the best philosophy here moving forward? These are the most talented guys coming out of high school. You get a Faison Brandon, and I'm not suggesting that you should pass that up, but if you're going to have to play him before he's ready, just to keep him, kind of like you did probably with Nico last season. Even though you got to play off with Nico, we all know that was the defense that carried that team last season. And then he ends up leaving anyway. I mean, there's a lot there to balance, and I don't know if there is a right answer, but I wonder if there's some philosophical shifts among college teams and how they build their rosters, specifically at the quarterback position, because I don't know. I mean, that's if you can't wait and you can't have these down years because nobody's going to be patient if you have a young roster, they don't care. Then maybe you have to go get, a portal guy every year, or maybe you get a guy that has 2 years and you can ride him for 2 years. No, I just think it's an interesting conversation.
It does seem like it's kind of shaping up that way. We're as yet to be seen how it really takes shape here, but I mean, if that whole system can make Vandy legitimately good, you're going to see it at least be popular going forward. I think they're the business case for the portal right now, and a ton of teams got to be looking and going, okay, that's what we need to do. And I hope Tennessee's doing the same. Is it sustainable? Is it the exact way you need to be every single season? Hopefully not. It would be good to get in 5-star players and develop them.
I mean, in a perfect world, they wait. Corey says GMAT should be ready to take over in year 2. If not, there's a serious problem. Like, I don't agree with that. And I'm not saying that you're wrong and I'm right, because I don't know. Every situation's different. But I think there still has to be some development. Like Ty Simpson, probably he can still develop. He was good this year, but he faded down the stretch. He's got room to improve, and he's a 4th-year guy. The development's different for every single player. I don't think you can expect a guy to be ready by year 2, because there's been some really good quarterbacks that weren't that great in year 2. It took them a couple of years, and especially with McIntyre and just his frame and needing to put on weight. I don't know if that's fair to put those expectations on guys coming out of high school, because some of them might take to their 3rd or 4th year to really blossom and be who they're going to be as a at their, or to reach their potential. So I don't know if it means that there's something wrong if you're not ready to play in year 2 as a quarterback.
Well, any news that comes out on that front, we'll obviously talk about it. Hopefully they get some stuff together by the time the portal opens, and we'll find out from there. What is it, January 2nd? We'll talk about it then, or continue to talk about it until then. And we can finish with this, Zach, I think. Tennessee basketball, Louisville, Thompson Bowling Arena tomorrow night on Tuesday. A chance for Rick Barnes and the boys to get back on track. And I think what's interesting right now is that I'm going to the game. I'll be there. If you see me, say what's up. I'm excited to go because it's going to be a fun game. But I'm not excited to watch Tennessee play basketball right now. And I hate to say that, seriously, because Rick has put some super fun teams on the floor, but until Nate Ament starts taking over, or until you figure something out further with the front court or your 2-guard position or something, you're struggling in every game you play. You're an underdog on your home floor right now against Louisville. a team that you put the smackdown on last year in their building, in the Yum Center there in Louisville. You won by 20 or something last year. It's a chance to turn things around in front of a friendly home crowd. It's going to be packed. People are going to be excited. But, I mean, I don't know. How are you feeling about Tennessee basketball right now, Zach?
I don't. I mean, it's kind of a coin flip at this point. I'm like you until Nate Ament, kind of turns into what we think he's going to be, and that's not to criticize him because he's still a young player. But until that happens, it's tough for this team to reach its potential. I mean, I think he's kind of got to go be the guy, be a lottery pick type of talent, or show that he is a lottery pick type of talent, but to show that on the floor before Tennessee can reach their potential. So I feel like it's so often that I said going into Tennessee football games where it's like I don't really know what to expect going into this game. I could see it, being a 10-point loss. I could see them coming out playing really well and cruising to a win. And it kind of sounds like you're hedging a bit, but that's just based on what we've seen these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it is what it is to this point. And Amit, just to where we are now, Amit just seems like a guy that hopefully you'll see him turn that corner by the end of the season, or you're going to see him turn the corner when he's in the NBA next year. And I hope it's not that. That's happened a number of times with guys under Rick who are the young 5-star types. But maybe he can take a Kennedy Chandler turn. That's what I'm hoping for. It took a little bit into the season for Kennedy Chandler to get his legs, and maybe it can happen.
And that's kind of like what Ben Hall says there in the comments. Like, you remember, when Connect and Lanier struggled a bit and then exploded. Because Connect, I mean, he had some big games, right? Like in that UNC game early on.
Got
and then
hurt.
he kind of struggled, a bit through that. I think these first year players coming into Rick Barnes' system, I mean, it's so demanding on both ends of the floor. I just don't think guys are ready for that because you don't really play that style coming up. I mean, AAU style basketball is not what high level college basketball is at all. I mean, the coaching is just not the same. And I think it takes some players some time, especially young players like Mint, who's very young, time to adjust to that. And I think that's what we're seeing from him. I mean, you've heard it in some of his comments, like after that Kansas game, talking about kind of how tired they were after those, 3 games in a row. And that's a product of playing that hard on both ends of the floor. I do think there is something to that. We'll see what happens here as you get into conference play. That's when you need to turn it on, and maybe it just kind of clicks and they're able to turn the corner then.
I'm waiting on it. Anytime now. Go ahead. Turn it on.
Hey, maybe it's tomorrow night when you're there. Maybe they just need you to be in attendance.
See, and I've been there for some good ones.
Will that be your first one this season?
This season, yeah.
So that's the problem.
And I'm trying to think the ones in the last couple of years, watched them beat Alabama, watched them beat Arizona. So I've been at some wins. The one we need to see in Thompson Bowling right now, because this has been, I think, if you lose this year, it'll be 3 straight years you've lost to Kentucky in Thompson Bowling. That better not happen.
Yeah, last year's was pretty particularly painful, but this season's would be even worse considering where Kentucky's been this season already and some of the stuff that's happening there.
Yes, very, very gratifying to beat them to move on to an Elite Eight, no doubt. But they stink, and to this point, you sort of stink outside of beating Houston. And so it's
that's still in this team. Like, that's the same team. It's the same players. I mean, that's what they're capable of doing. So I don't think it's totally like the sky is falling type deal. It's just like, hey, you got to get going. Like, you've had this lull here. How long have they been off? When was the last time they played now?
10, I think it'd be 10 days by the time.
So maybe that's what they needed. Maybe that comes at the perfect time.
Well, and you need it. I think it'll be good with JP Estrella's health. Need him to get back to 100% power there. And yeah, just more time for Mint and the team in general to gel.
What's it gonna be without Phillips? Like, what's the plan moving forward there?
He wasn't having a great year anyway because of the injury, I think. he's a smart player who kind of knows where to be. He's wily. Hate that you're losing somebody like that. What I hope it turns into is that JP Estrella comes back and is a flamethrower. I mean, that would be ideal. And Dwayne Brown is apparently going to start this game. Freshman is going to start at the 4. And it would be awesome if he's great. I get the feeling it's going to be kind of a ceremonial start where he starts and then Rick takes him out and he ends up only playing like 7 minutes in the whole game. But still, maybe you can get something there. And he plays well enough to be an absolute dude. Maybe he turns into a bit of a Zakai Ziegler of sorts where he's good in a freshman year. And, it's just, but something's got to start happening, though. And no better time than now because you got 2 snoozers and then you got to, after Louisville, and then you got to go to Arkansas.
Yeah, it gets real after that.
Yeah. So get it together. I'll be there to watch it in person, whether they do or not. So, I think that might be it, Zach. A little bit of a shorter show tonight. Anything else for the folks at home before we bounce out of here?
No, I mean, we're gearing up for this weekend of college football playoff action. It's a little depressing that Tennessee's not in it like they were a year ago. But, they did that to themselves. Maybe you make that kick against Georgia, it turns the whole season around. But it should be a fun weekend of games. I'm anxious to watch that Alabama-Oklahoma game, I believe, on Friday night, because that's one where if Alabama loses that game, I'm really interested to see if that extension with Kalen DeBoer gets done. I mean, I think it probably will. I mean, he shut down the talk and all that. But if you lose that game, especially if it's like a blowout, which I don't think it will be, because Oklahoma's offense isn't good enough to score that many points. But maybe he hits the eject button and says, you know what, let's go to Michigan. It's a little bit easier there. Some years you can get a schedule where you only play Ohio State and that's it. You just win everything else and you'll be fine, because sometimes you can get lucky in the big. We've seen some teams this year that got fortunate with schedules like that in the Big Ten. So that's one that I'll be interested to watch and see what happens there.
Same. Yeah, DeBoer might be hitting that Michigan job if they blow that again against 3 straight losses against Oklahoma.
Yeah, that would
not the way to keep your job at Alabama.
And who knows what Michigan's going to do? I mean, that whole situation's so crazy with Sharon Moore. I mean, this is already a crazy month, and then that comes out in the middle of it, just absolutely nuts. But who do you go hire in that situation? It feels like you need to clean house of everything from the Harbaugh era and all of that deal at this point, and just completely. They probably need to fire the AD too, honestly, and just completely start over. And in that situation, it can be a good thing. Like I still feel like Josh Heupel coming in, even though we talked about having to bring this program back from the dead, I think coming in to where everything had just kind of been burned to the ground and you could start fresh and didn't have to worry about changing the culture and stuff. Like there was no culture essentially when Heupel got here. I think that can be a little bit easier to turn around than coming into a situation where they've been okay, hasn't been terrible, hasn't been great. If that makes sense. Like I feel like that. I just feel like it's easier to kind of implement who you want to be in a program, and Michigan would be that. And Kalen DeBoer did not step into that at Alabama, and I think that's been part of the reason it's been rocky there at times. Is he's had to try to blend the Alabama way with the Kalen DeBoer way instead of just doing it the Kalen DeBoer way, which is the best way for him. And I think he could do that at Michigan. So I could see why that would be attractive, but ultimately I think I'd be surprised if he actually left Alabama.
I would be pretty surprised. I'm not hanging my hat on that at all. I think they'll do something weird and
get stuck with Brian Kelly or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be the best they can do.
I heard they were still looking at guys off of Harbaugh's old staff. You're like, leave that behind. I think it's time. 2 massive scandals later, maybe it's time to cut ties with that whole era. But yeah.
One I thought interesting would be Clark Lee, who just signed that extension at Vanderbilt, who seems committed to Vanderbilt, went to Vanderbilt. Everything says, why would he leave Vanderbilt if he's that committed? But if you get left out of the playoff at 10-2 as an SEC team, there's got to be part of you. It's like, what do I have to do at Vanderbilt to make the playoff? And Pavia is gone, and that was the guy that, I mean, that was the magic, right? No disrespect to Clark Lee. I like Clark Lee. I think he's a good coach. clearly he's a good coach. But Pavia was what won you most of those games. He's gone. Maybe you look at that 10-2 and you're like, you know, if I gotta go 11-1 at Vanderbilt with a 9-game schedule, what are we doing? Let's go to Michigan.
Yep.
So,
Hey. Well, whatever nuttiness happens there, we'll make fun of it here.
yes.
On this show, no doubt about it. I'm Charlie Burris. That's Zach Reagan. Thank you to everybody for watching. We see y'all in the comments. Billy Bob, Leslie, Tennis Girl, Backflip Spaghetti, great name. Larry, over on Facebook. We appreciate it. Could not do this show without you. Seriously, I say it every week. Mean it every week. I do. Hey, like I said, we'll see what happens. And we will be right back here to talk about it at this time 1 week from now. So, yeah, that's it. We'll talk to y'all. Oh, wait. I keep forgetting. I have my stuff over here, Zach. Away. I'm having, because of the sound problems, I'm having to broadcast over here and control the stream over here. Let me open the stream back up. This is great. This is how you know it's live. All right, there we go. We'll talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.